all know that election is the most powerful tool of democracy. Democracy is a system where we govern ourselves by selecting our own leader, our own politicians. In this video, I'm gonna surprise you with my findings that who were the actual civilization, were they Greek or Romans or the ancient humans who invented elections? And funnily, in a funny manner, I've called them as culprits. So let's challenge the view. Greek invented it and America perfected it. People often cite that ancient Greeks as the original inventors of democracy and the United States as the modern day country that re-established and perfected the system. But how correct is this view? The most common notion people have is that modern Western democracy are built upon the model created by ancient Greek city-states and the Roman Republic that came after them. And this is true to a large extent. No other ancient culture that we know had developed a democratic system quite like Greek and then perfected by Americans. So, yep, by a Mediterranean opinion and the research, yes, Greeks and America were like first and second to perfect the system of elections. That means democratic elections. There's a word called demos in Croatia. Democracy has a Greek origin and comes from the Greek word called demos, or the people, and Croatia, that is power of rule. Democracy, this is from where the democracy is known to give power to the people by allowing them to elect their own governments. But then, ancient human did vote? Question mark. Yes, anthropologists believe that the same process can be traced all the way back to hunter-gatherers days of human civilization. To the days before humanity even had a civilization, we had a system of voting. Anthropologists further believe that hierarchy of some kind is almost always present. Even in democracy, this does not mean that an electoral process can't be a part of such a system. According to anthropologists, there are various forms of proto-democracy that has been found by the researcher, and it existed in almost every hunter-gatherer tribe and even in the society prior to the rise of larger sedentary and agrarian society. So there were two ways of selection of chief of the small group or alpha. It was by force and by elections. So there are enough research to show that some of these smaller groups selected the chief or the alpha or the leader of the group through election process. But then was there any downside to the ancient electoral process or the process of election in these ancient societies? Yes. Voting was restricted mostly to the native, male, and the land owning population, while women, foreigners, and slaves were kept away from the electoral process. This, as we know, that the slaves and women were discriminated upon in the ancient society, so even they were discriminated in the election process. So that is the biggest downside of ancient democracy and ancient electoral process. And when I say ancient, I'm talking about Roman and Greek democracy, because in pre-ancient era there were the societies there were groups whose leaders were women. So patriarchy was not always the dominant form in the ancient human civilization. Matriarchy was also there, but in Roman and Greek, women, foreigners, and slaves were not allowed to vote. Slaves were a key aspect of how both societies were able to create powerful economies, because they were the laborers. They were made to do all type of work which other people will not do, and they were basically the engine who were running the culture and higher education standards, but they were still not entitled to vote. Do we have any proof that there were elections in ancient India and in other part of the world other than ancient Greeks and the Romans? Yes. Sanghas and Ganas in ancient India, that is prehistoric republic of sort that existed between 16th and 4th century BCE. But the issue here is that mostly there is no much written evidence about them to go on. And another fact is that they didn't survive for long. Similarly, Phoenicia and the eastern bank of Mediterranean River also had the practice of government by assembly. So when democracy became a full-fledged governmental system, it was between 17th and 18th century. Democracy as a viable governmental system came into existence first in Europe and North America in 17th and 18th centuries. The process was not sudden, even if we often like to point out events like French or American Revolution as turning point in history. The circumstances in which those turning points occurred had to slowly form over time. Before ending the video, let's see another term called true democracy. According to Democracy Index as of 2021, there were only 21 true democracies in the world, a grand total of 12.6% of all countries on the planet. Another 53 countries were categorized as flawed democracies, that is, countries with systematic electoral and oligarchic corruption problems. Do let me know how you find this video. Thank you.